Hi, this is a Curvy 3D tutorial where we'll be modelling some props for the Gigantic series. In this video we'll be modelling the sword shown in this image. So I've got the red version there is what we're going to make, and I'll draw it on the right. So starting with a loft object, I'm drawing the side, the bottom, the top, and the other side. Then I can use the ruler tool to straighten out parts of the sword, and the soft move tool to tweak the curve into position. I'm going to use the redraw as ellipse arc ruler to give a nice curved end to my sword. I'm changing the soft move to different shapes. I think I'm going to change the sword to being symmetrical. So I'll just delete one of the curves and copy and mirror paste using the curve menu, curve mirror, to make a symmetrical version, and using the semicircle ruler and scaling that down. That's making a decent sword shape. I'm going to use the ruler on the bottom from the middle to the edge. This splits the line into two, and then the soft move tool to move that split point out to make us a ridge in the middle of the sword. So each time you use a ruler, it creates new points at the ends of where you drag. So dragging from the middle of that curve will create an extra point. It's easier to see the points if you press A and go into wireframe mode. You can see all the different vertices. Now in the side view, I'm drawing a sort of backwards E shape. Which is going to be part of the hilt. I'm using the ruler tool to then shape my sketch into something a bit more mechanical looking. And then I've pressed 1 on the keyboard to make my soft move tool drag a single point. You can use 1 to 0 to change the size of effect of the soft move tool. Going back to my ruler, sharpening things up. So now this is going round. It's sort of basically spun round the endpoints of that curve. If I use the auto lathe 2, it makes a copy of the curve on the other side, so I can change the size. Increase the resolution to make it crisper. And then I'm going to use closed loop to, instead of capping the ends, it sort of links the start and the end of the curves. In this case, it hollows out the middle of the lathe, so it becomes a ring, or a very square donut shape. Notice now we've got two curves. Dragging one of them will change the radius of the ring. And that's quite a nice shape. We can just scale the depth a little to make it fit our sword. So next I'm going to create some spikes going around the side. Again, this is a lathe tool, where I draw one side of the profile of the spike, and the ruler tool to sharpen up. Sharpen up points. Soft move tool just to tweak the shape slightly, make it slightly sort of pinched at the end. Redraw that with a smooth curve. And rotate that and scale it into place, holding shift to move it in and out of the screen. There we have one spike. Now we're creating several and we want them to be evenly spaced around this ring. So I'm going to use duplicate proxy to make a copy which is linked to the original, and then set it to array mode in that little selector at the top. Pick a number of copies I want, and then now if I rotate in the middle of the ring, it'll copy those 8 duplicates around where I've rotated. So I'm going to bake those into normal lathes, and I bake them into proxies, separate proxies, and bake them into lathes. That separates them all out so I can pick the ones I want to keep. Just making some more pieces for the hilt with cylinders. Now I'm going to draw this decoration with a slab object. Again, getting the rough shape drawn with a sketch, and then we'll improve the shape of the curves afterwards with the simple arc and the ellipse arc. So I'm dragging to this where I want corners, and it's making a nice arc in between. So now we've made quite a stylized shape quite easily. To add some decoration here, I'm going to make a little hole in the mesh. So I'm going to clone the curve and scale it down, and then use the scissor tool to chop off the ends of the curve. It'll always chop off the longer end, so if you've got a lot to chop, then you start at the longer end near the top, and you make several cuts to slice it into shape. Otherwise it'll cut off the shorter end. And now we've got that decoration in place, we can reuse it to make it even more ornate. So I'm going to duplicate with Control D, scale it down, rotate it into place. In this case I'm making just rotating it onto the other side, and then I'll copy and mirror paste both parts to make a symmetrical ornament. If you're not working in the center of the grid, the mirror will send your pieces off to the side. So you might need to sort of zoom out to find them, to drag them back in. It's always simpler just to leave your model centered on the middle of the grid. So we made the hilt. Now we make the pommel with another slab. Again, we sketch out a rough shape. This time we're only drawing half the shape. Switching to wireframe view, just so we can see what the points are doing. Picking a ruler to use, pick a nice circular ruler. Gives us nice sweeping circular arcs. Curve mirror in X to take that curve all the way around to make it two sides the same. And to make a hole again, we're going to clone that curve using curve clone. Scale the curve down, and it cuts a hole into the slab. And then we're just going to move it into position. And we're going to make a duplicate. Again, scaling the curves. This will make a ridge around the middle of the pommel. So this is a very simple way of sculpting. It's almost like using a restricted palette, because there's only a few simple primitive shapes that you can draw, and you're forced to be more creative with how you combine them to make more complicated objects. So for the handle, I want it to be like a twisted ribbed shape. So I'm going to make one side of the ribs and use the semicircle, not the semicircle, redraw the semicircle ruler to redraw parts of that curve as nice semicircles. And then using Auto Mirror 2, I'm going to make that so it looks a bit like a twisted helix. So we're only going to see this from one angle, so it doesn't matter that it's not a real helix. There we have the sword. Next time we'll move on to the hilt.